feel like this is me sometimes whenever I go too long between eating. Let me just stick my head right in the bucket. What do you think, girly?
I feel like we're reinforcing bad habits.
How?
Hey, if you guys break out of your pen, we'll give you extra food. Flip side is they're not going to follow us where they're supposed to go if we don't give them the food.
Yeah. Look at these guys over here. Hey, look at you big guys. Oh, they're huge. So these are the feeder pigs, which they're actually from the first litter. And these are the babies of Fanny and Clem, who I showed you at the beginning with their head in the bucket. And they're a lot bigger because they're fed differently. They're fed feeder, like grower food. So we've just put a lot more weight on them. So Fanny and Clem have been in this yard and it doesn't have an electric wire. And they broke the gate. So they were just out in the backyard. And the kids hollered for us, so we got them back in. Do you realize that we found our property 7 years ago today?
I did not realize that.
Yep.
How do you know that?
I just remember things. But the date was actually today.
Oh.
Testy. Yeah, let me dump this out so we don't have a... Yeah, this is gonna require both hands. What do you have to do?
Well, okay, so we have a few of these, but we've started getting a different brand of gate because this is a Tractor Supply gate. What tends to happen with these is, if you can get in here, you can see if the pipe gets crushed from adding pressure to make sure the hinge stays where it's supposed to,
Yeah.
it just continually slides down and it doesn't stay. I haven't had issues with like our red gate from the local feed store, and they're a different brand. I think one of the bigger factors on those gates is that the bottom hinge is welded on and it's not bolted on, so it doesn't ever move.
I see.
And so it makes this one more stable. But anyways, I mean, I'm not gonna buy a new gate just because this keeps doing this. I'm gonna try and fix it a different way. I'm gonna add a pretty thick layer of this electrical tape where I want the hinge at.
Yeah.
And that should help give it some friction and pressure when I tighten it back down to stay where it's supposed to.
Oh, hey Manny, what's up? Oh, Manny is not feeling the camera today. Dr. Ennis is. Hey, Dr. Ennis. It was 7 years ago today that we found this property, and so I thought it would be fitting to tell you guys the story of that. I'm gonna turn the water on out here. So I'm actually gonna tear these peas out. These are really frost damaged. And there's actually still some peas on here, but they froze pretty hard in here recently. And I'm just gonna tear these out and feed them to the animals and actually replant them with some more peas so we can have some fresh ones here in a little bit. So the story of how we got our property. We were living in town and I had this crazy big dream of being a homesteader. I wanted some land, some space. I wanted to live out in the country, you know, raise my kids in this lifestyle. So at the time, Jackson and Malia, who are now 15, were 7. Jeremiah was working at our local church, and I was a full-time student and staying home with the kids. So I had gone back to school to get an art degree, which I never finished. And I was staying home with my children, but they were in school. My older kids were in school, and we had Toby and Ezra, and they were babies. We were living in a rent house that my dad owned in town. It was the house that I grew up in a town that's pretty close to here called Sherwood, and my dad still lives there. And we had a pretty restricted budget, to put it nicely. I did a little bit of photography on the side at that point, but I had kind of slowed my business down as I was in school full time. So on a day in January, and I remember this really well because I was planning on taking my Christmas decorations down that day, and I was like really behind on it. And my dad called me, and he lived down the road from us, and he asked me to give him a ride to pick up a truck that he had being worked on. And I had just put Toby and Ezra, who were, I guess, 1 and 2 at the time, down for a nap. and I was about to take the Christmas decorations down. My dad didn't call me and ask me for stuff like that, just a whole lot, and he was always so willing to help me that I was like, fine, I'll put the kids in the car, they can sleep in the car, I'll give you a ride. And on the way, we were going down this back road there outside Sherwood that I really didn't drive down very much. I didn't have ever any reason to go that way. And it was sort of like right on the outskirts of city limits. And there were just some semi like rural-ish properties there. It was like a neighborhood, but where there were like lots of lots that had like a handful of acres each. And we drove past this one place that was for sale. Like, I'm talking like I was obsessed with having a farm. I talked about it all the time. I read books about it all the time. Like, if I ever had a day like where Jeremiah was like, I'll keep the kids, you go take a few hours for yourself, I would go to bookstores, libraries, and read homesteading books. And right before this instance that I'm telling you about, Maya and I had gone on a date night one night. And I remember this so well because it was sometime after Christmas and this happening. So it was just a few weeks before it happened. And he and I were sitting in Barnes & Noble in the coffee shop, drinking a cup of coffee. And I was looking at a homesteading book. And I so vividly remember this instance because it was just like this marking moment and the way that this all played out. I remember this book being open to the page about pigs, funnily enough, now that we're chasing pigs and I'm recounting this, but I started crying in the bookstore. I was just crying these massive tears on this book because it just felt so impossible. And I remember this conversation that Maya and I had after that, this crying in the bookstore on date night instance, like spurred a conversation where we just talked about it and we're like, we're just going to be content where we are. And if it takes us 5 years to get out to the country and start this dream, then it takes us 5 years and we're just going to be content. It was funny that a few weeks later, when I was driving my dad to the shop, we passed this house and it had a red barn and it was an older house and it was on, I think it was 6 acres if I remember correctly. It had this big red barn in the back and my dad pointed it out and he's like, well, you should look into that. You should see it. And I was like, Dad, we can't afford that. And he's like, how do you know if you've never looked into it? And I dropped my dad off at the shop and on the way home, I was driving home. My kids were asleep in the car and I was driving back past this house and I don't know, I just thought, well, I guess maybe I should. And I pulled in and I looked the property up on the website that was on this sign, and it was a HUD foreclosure, and the house was like $60,000 or something. It was like way under the market for that area, and it had 6 acres. It had this red barn, and I, at that point, I'm like, what? I'm completely stunned. I didn't know that HUD foreclosures were a thing at that time. And so I got out, and I'm looking into the windows, and the house needed a lot of work. But my heart was beating so hard. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this could be possible. We could actually afford this. Well, I went home and I called Jeremiah and I was like, hey, I need to show you something. Would you please come with me? Whenever you get home, can you come with me? And so he did. Whenever he got home, we got our other kids from school and I took him back over. This house wasn't far from where we lived. And I was like, what do you think about this? Like, this is possible. And I'm like reeling because at this point here, I had finally, after like desperately dreaming for years, I had finally like settled in my heart that we're going to wait. And then this just comes up. We ended up putting an offer in on that place that day. We put an offer in and I was, oh my gosh, alight with hope. I was just, I don't think I slept that night. And the next morning, we found out that an offer had been received and accepted about 15 minutes before ours. Now, as it turns out, my dad is the building inspector for that city. He ended up finding out the process that had to be done to rehab that house. It had some foundation issues. We did not have the finances required to do what that house needed to be done. And that's how it is with foreclosures. I mean, sometimes you can get like a steal of a deal that maybe just needs some cosmetic work. And sometimes they need somebody with like some real skill and buying power to come in and really revamp them. And that was the case with that house. I was heartbroken. I'm talking like crying. I didn't get out of bed the next morning. It felt so cruel because I had just like let myself hope in this. in a big way. After I'd finally like resolved to fully wait and possibly even wait years, then this thing comes up where I think it's possible again, and I was so crushed. Like, it was one of those instances where I was trying to resolve in myself that I wasn't gonna want this at all anymore. I was like, you know, I'm not gonna be foolish enough to believe that this is possible again, because I'm not gonna be disappointed like this again. Jeremiah, bless him, had for years been going and looking at farm properties with me. I can't even tell you how many farm properties I drugged this man to. When we knew we couldn't afford them, when we knew that there was no way we were gonna be able to do it, but because I was dreaming and I was a dreamer and I'm a visual person and I love to lay eyes on something so I can lay my imagination on it, and I used to drag him. Oh, and we walked so many pieces of land, and we looked at so many, you know, places. If it was the kind of place that we could go look, like without wasting a realtor's time, man, I wanted it so bad. And he had always gone for years. I mean, from when we were dating, this is what I wanted to do. And this morning, after the great disappointment of the house with the red barn, Jeremiah comes in and says, hey, I found a property I want to go look at today. And I was like, absolutely not. I'm not interested. I don't want to go look at a property. No. And I was like a brat about it. I was like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not going. We're not going to have a farm. We're going to wait till our kids are grown. And I was just being a butthead because I was honestly disappointed, and I was trying to protect myself from it happening again. And he totally pulled like a trump card on me and was like, get out of bed. I have looked at no less than 100 farm properties with you since we had been dating. You know, as soon as we knew we were gonna get married, that's all I wanted to do. And he's like, and so because I have always gone, he said, I have traipsed through all kinds of properties and spent how many date nights reading homesteading books, how many things have I gone along with? He's like, get out of bed, we're going to look at this place. And we pulled up here at our house. I refused to get out of the car. He got out. The back door was unlocked, so he ended up coming in. It was also a foreclosure. It was on 4 acres, and it had no barns, no fences, no infrastructure. The house needed a ton of work, and I was the biggest brat about it. I wouldn't get out of the car. The first time that we came and looked at this house, I would not get out of the car. And I'm saying this in jest now, because I think it's hilarious sometimes how we get in our own way. And I am like the queen of that. I was actually recently writing something, and I was saying that I hope that whenever like the story of my life is told, I hope that the fact that I've usually done the right thing whenever I should, I hope that that is like the loudest theme. And maybe that Grace will overlook the fact that often I did it kicking and screaming because like this was one of those instances. And he came to the car and he's like, I want to buy this house. And I was just like, it doesn't have a barn. It's 30 minutes outside of town. It doesn't have this. I couldn't see it. He's so visionary. I couldn't see it. I was like, this place is a wreck. This property is a wreck. I want a garden. I literally said this. I want a garden, and this isn't a property for a good garden. Like, that's hilarious now. But I basically told him that if he must pursue this, that I wouldn't get in his way, but I didn't like it. I really did. I said that about my home now. And he did. He called the realtor that day and put in an offer. I want to go make some pigs happy. Hey girls. Hey girl. You want some pea shoots? There you go. Hey little babies. So I remember coming out here a few days after it was after the offer was made, but before we knew that it was accepted. And it was a day a lot like this one, where it was just like a really nice mild day in January. And my sister came out here with me and we brought the kids. And we just were like walking around the property, and back here that used to be all woods, just exploring out in it. And I remember just falling madly in love that day. and starting to imagine what it might be like to turn this into like a farm. Oh, hey.
I just wanted to report in that the pigs have been wrangled.
Oh, good.
And I'm just gonna go get lunch.
Okay.
Leftover chili.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do it. I was telling them how I was a butthead when we first found this property.
Yeah, it's surprising but honest to admit that I actually had to put my foot down and be like, we're gonna buy this house.
I told them
And
that.
she was like, I'm not gonna like it. I'm like, well.
I told them.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, we're in our relationship, that's just almost never necessary. We're usually on the same page. But in this instance, like, you are
I was protecting myself
over the property that was never supposed to be ours, and honestly, I saw the potential of this amazing place.
And he was like, this is what we need to do. And
over there?
Yeah, let's come in here where it's not so windy. Well, it's not windy at all. It's in the high tunnel. Hey, I own the fact that I was a butthead. I don't deny it. It was true. I was heartsick. But, I mean, I went along with it. I ended up falling in love with it. And by the time...
It's not like I drug you into this house kicking and screaming.
Well, no.
When we were in the process of buying this house, we totally, like, broke into this house all the time.
Yeah, we probably shouldn't put that on YouTube.
Really? At this point, why would that matter?
The door didn't lock.
Okay, no, the door is literally falling off. Like, it was so bad that the door was, like, barely in the hole, and so we literally could just walk in. And so, yeah, we came inside, and we'd, like...
We used to bring our lunch out here.
We would get lunch and come in here and sneak into this house and sit in it before we actually owned it. Like, what are they going to do now? We're here to arrest you for sitting in your house that is now yours.
7 years ago.
7 years ago. Doesn't the statute of limitations essentially, like, make that null at some point? I don't know.
We did. We used to come. It took almost 4 months to close. There were so many different like things that came up, and it was just a really unusual situation. But everything went through. We got the house in April, and we moved in on April 27th of 2014. But yeah, that whole process started 7 years ago today, and that 3.5, 4 months of waiting to know for sure, because it was still like there was still some question of whether we were going to be able to use our loan or we were going to have the money, like all the different stuff. We had to do a lot of repairs and escrow. It didn't have anything that's here now.
No fences, no buildings.
Yeah, the house was a mess. When we moved in, we had to start working on the house to make it livable, and I was dying to start the farm. It was August when I brought home 30 chicks in a box. 31. I was hasty. We didn't have anything to take care of them. I quickly became no longer the person who makes decisions on the animals that we get.
That is true.
Hey, you're the one who keeps getting new goats.
Yeah, but how much of a burden has that been?
None.
No. All right, I'm going to get chili.
Okay.
Have a good chat.
Hey, look, my calendula is opening.
What's a calendula?
It's a flower, of course. So that was the story of what we were doing 7 years ago today. I don't know. I share that because it is, you know, I'm laughing about it and stuff. But I do think that there's wisdom to be had in maybe realizing that a lot of the times that we might be trying to protect ourselves from disappointment, that we might actually cost ourselves really beautiful opportunities. And I'm really thankful that Jeremiah had the vision and the wherewithal on that day to see the value of this place, because now 7 years later, I just can't imagine where our life would be if we had not made that jump. It's been process. I'm gonna leave that open. It's pretty warm in there. It's been process and a lot of hard work, and a lot of patience, and a lot of pig wrangling, but it's been so worth it. By the time I got out here with the camera, the guys already had the feed bucket and had the pigs let out of here, but the big mama pigs were out here in my garlic and onions. What is it about this that they are just determined to come mess with it? I like to think that I have learned the lesson from that situation of, you know, like seeing the value in things that may look a lot like hard work and may not look like you thought it was gonna come, because I had in my mind that I was gonna have a red barn. Like, I just had in my mind, I'm gonna have my little farm with my little red barn, and this just didn't look like I thought it was gonna look like. I mean, I was just determined that this was a terrible place to try to have a garden, what with all the rocks in the ground. I'm gonna make sure that these little seedlings don't need water because it is warm in here. Soil looks okay. Oh, hey, check it out. Y'all see that? Little sprouts coming up through the soil. We have germination. Happy birthday, little guys. That's exciting. So now, 7 years later, after having gone through all of that process and that work, we are planning what I believe will be our last gardening year at this property before we move on. And I don't know, I'm just like really feeling very full circle in a lot of things and feeling incredibly thankful. And I don't want to miss out on it, you know, like I don't want to miss out on the opportunity for wonder in all of these things, because we've just already reached the point that's so much more than I ever thought it would be. So it's pretty sweet. Well, I think I'm gonna meet Jeremiah inside and get in on those chili leftovers. So thank you guys for going on a little walk down memory lane with me this morning as we remembered that time that I couldn't see the opportunity that was right in front of me. I bless you guys. Until next time.